Let me challenge you with a new way of thinking about marketing in your organization that you should have as the leader of your company, and every single person in your organization should share. And that is this. What have you done today to attract a customer? What have you done today to keep a customer? This insight into marketing comes from my guest today on Construction Genius, Wayne Mullins. He is the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing. Wayne and I are going to dive into what good marketing is and how that is distinguished from bad marketing, and how you can execute an excellent marketing campaign in your business on a consistent basis in order to attract great clients and keep your existing clients. You're going to be challenged with what Wayne has to share, but you're also going to have specific actions that you can take as a result of listening to today's show. So enjoy my conversation with Wayne. Feel free to share it with other people in your organization and other construction leaders who you think would benefit. And thanks for listening to Construction Genius today. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Wayne, welcome to Construction Genius.
Eric, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I am as well. I'm fascinated by marketing. It's something that I focus a lot of my business on, but you're a domain expert in marketing. You have your own marketing company. So tell me, what is marketing?
Great question, Eric. And what's interesting about that simple question is if you were to ask that question to 100 different people, you would probably get 100 different answers to that question. And so what we like to do, we work with clients in a huge range of industries. We like to boil it down to the basics. So when we think, what is marketing? We define it this way. Marketing is simply your ability to attract and keep a customer. That's the definition we like to use.
That is excellent. So let's explore that then. What do you mean by attracting a customer?
Yeah, great. So Eric, when you think of marketing, most people typically think of advertising. They use those words interchangeably. But the reality is advertising is just one portion of the marketing puzzle, so to speak. And on the attracting side, that is typically where we're doing the advertising. That's where we're putting messaging out into the world in hopes that our message will resonate with the right people who need our services. And so that's when we think of attracting, we typically think of advertising. In other words, broadcasting something out to the world in hopes that they are interested in what we do.
Okay. Let's explore that idea of messaging then. What is the biggest challenge in your experience that companies have with effective messaging?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind when it comes to messaging. Number one is that if you confuse, you lose. Now, I stole that phrase from an author by the name of Donald Miller. He wrote a book called Story Brand, right? And that phrase, if you confuse, you lose, should be at the base of all your messaging. In other words, don't overcomplicate it. Make sure that it's clear, concise, and to the point. Now, the second add-on part to that is you cannot clearly and effectively if you don't thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, understand your audience. So let me take that one step further. When I say understand your audience, you need to be able to write a journal from your ideal customer's journal in their journal. So in other words, you should know so much about them. You should know their pain points. You should know what keeps them up at night. You should know what their family life looks like. You should know so much about them that you could literally write a page from their personal journal. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about knowing your audience. It's not surface level. It's really getting below that. And I see a book on your shelf behind you there, Eric. Persuasion, I believe, if I'm seeing that correctly.
Yeah.
Cialdini, and he dives into a bit of that in that book as well, in terms of knowing your audience in order to properly persuade them, influence them.
Okay, so I'd like to explore that, because as soon as you start talking about stuff that is sort of touchy-feely in a certain way, like knowing your customers, I can feel like some of my audience just getting a little bit uncomfortable with that. And then also asking a question, well, what do you mean by that? Because I have multiple types of projects that I build for different types of companies. So let's explore that a little bit. How do you really get to know your target audience? And then how do you select your target audience? Maybe take the first one first.
Yeah. So the first one, how do you get to know your target audience? The simple answer to that is, it's a cheat of an answer, but the answer is time. It takes time. In other words, spend time with those people, spend time with your current clients, whether that's on the site, whether that's, outside of the site, getting to know them, bringing them to lunch, to dinner, whatever it may be, so that you get to know them outside of just the business context, just the project context. And that will kind of pull back the curtain. And I know for a lot of us, myself included, it's very difficult for me to separate business from personal, right? When I'm in business mode, I'm thinking business, my conversations tend to all stay business. So I have to be very intentional about leaning into the personal side. So that would be one, as it relates to getting to know them, it's a time investment. It's an investment in, you should know how many kids they have. You should know what their hobbies are. You should know all these various aspects about their lives, because once you understand that, you can then speak to them in meaningful ways. And I'm talking about specifically through your marketing messages.
Excellent. So please give me some help here. If you're working with a client and they have, let's say, multiple different markets that they're in, what advice do you give them in terms of where they should start in terms of marketing? Because sometimes I see with marketing messages, it's kind of like a spray and pray approach. Whereas, my experience has been, and the way I counsel my clients, is the best marketing is very pinpointed and very specific.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that. The more specific you can speak to that person, that specific industry, that specific niche that you're targeting. So whether it's a certain type of project, whether it's a certain type of industry that you're working in, the more specifically you can speak to them, the more specifically you can put your company, your message in front of them, the more effective it's going to be. The sad reality, Eric, is this is the way most of us approach marketing. It's what you said. It's kind of the shotgun approach, right? We're going to broadcast our message out to as many people that we think need to hear our message. And then we're going to hope and pray that it sticks with the right ones. Yep. And instead, like you said, we need to be laser focused. And so one of the things that we recommend doing is, instead of this shotgun approach, if you work in, let's just say there's 6 different verticals that you're operating in those 6 verticals, in those 6 industries, maybe go through and list out the 50 ideal clients that you want to work with. Mm-hmm. Only market to those 50 over and over again. That's a huge fundamental shift, because our mentality is that if we're not broadcasting to the world, we're going to miss out on some stuff, right? Yep. We're going to miss out on some other projects. We're going to miss out on potential bids that we could be putting out. Yep. When in reality, if we focus on our ideal, the dream clients we would love to work with, the dream projects we would love to have, and we slowly over time build those relationships, the opportunities will come. They always do.
So let me ask you this then. In your marketing messaging, I often think that people purchase construction services either to avoid pain or gain some kind of pleasure. What do you counsel your clients to do in terms of what they should emphasize in their marketing messages in order to attract those clients to their organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to vary slightly based on the specific industry, right? Based on the type of project that you're bidding on. So if it's a major industrial project versus a municipal smaller project, you're going to approach those things a little bit differently, because the pain points, the points of quote unquote pleasure for those people are going to be slightly different. Now, here's the interesting thing though. If we strip away all the differences, at the core, there's certain fundamental elements that everyone wants, right? Everyone wants to know that when they sign off on the project, that you are going to make them look good, right? That you're going to keep your word, that timelines are going to be hit, which, as we know, in the construction industry, always a challenge. Those are the things that they're looking for. And those are some universals. So step one is I would identify what are the universal, quote unquote, truths. What are the things that would apply across the board? And we always have to remember that people buy for their reasons, their decisions, not from ours, right? It's from their perspective, not ours. And often I think we forget that in our marketing messaging.
That's excellent. Excellent. So let me go to your first statement again. The idea of marketing is your ability to attract and then keep a customer. I think that a lot of people miss that keep the customer part. So how does marketing relate to keeping customers? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to go survey your audience, Eric, and you were to say, where does the bulk of your new business come from? One of the most common answers that you would hear back, more than likely, is word of mouth, right? Mm-hmm. Such and such told their friend, or, it's all these interconnections along the way. So the question becomes, if we were to be intentional about keeping customers, what that means is we would look at our marketing budget, whatever that dollar is, and we would say, okay, what percentage of my marketing budget am I using to attract customers? And what percentage of my marketing budget am I using to keep customers? Now, that's a challenging question in that it's going to reveal this. The vast majority, 90+% of your budget is probably being spent on attracting new people, right? And yet we intuitively know that our best new customers come from people often who have been referred, right? They're referrals into us, word of mouth. And yet we're not intentional on that keeping side.
Okay, so that's really good there. Let's explore then that percentage. Give us some feedback here on, particularly with different stages of a business. What is that balance between what you're spending on attracting new customers and what you're spending on keeping new customers in terms of marketing? What is that percentage? Give me something on that.
Sure. It's tough to answer for this one reason. If someone is just starting out and they have no existing customers, or one or two, very few, right? Those numbers are going to be very heavily skewed the other way. But here's what I would tell you. If you've been in business for, any reasonable amount of time, so a few years, you've got several projects under your belt, several clients or customers, quote unquote, in your portfolio, I would challenge you to look at your marketing budget and try to get that budget closer to 50-50. So 50% on attracting, 50% on keeping. Now, here's the interesting thing. When we hear that, our minds immediately go back to kind of that scarcity thinking of, but if I'm not broadcasting, if I'm not putting all this out in the world, how will people find us? How will we get the other projects, et cetera? And what we, again, know, if we examine, what we realize is that our best clients typically come from, our best projects typically come from word of mouth, from other people, other previous clients who've referred to us. So the goal is always, you want to spend as much as you possibly can on the keeping side. Your goal over time is that as you grow, as your client list, your customer list grows, that your attracting budget decreases over time as your existing client base increases.
Okay, excellent. So what are some of the differences between the messages I'm communicating on the attraction and the messages I'm communicating on the keeping? Or let me ask it another way. What are some key messages on the keeping side I need to communicate?
Sure. So on the keeping side, it's very important to remember that these are established relationships, right? They already know you, they already like you, and they already have some trust in you, right? There's been some money that has exchanged hands. So there's some trust already taking place here. So your messaging doesn't need to focus as heavily on getting them to know about you, to know your services, your whatever all those things may be. It doesn't need to spend as much time getting them and trying to convince them to like you, like your company, like your people, like your organization. And it doesn't need to spend as much time building trust. What it does need to do is it needs to foster a relationship. It needs to reveal that you're in this for the long run, that this wasn't a one-time project for you, that your company is going to be here in 5 years, in 10 years, when they have that next project, right? We're investing in the future of this relationship. So a big distinction is we don't need to spend as much time, quote unquote, selling them, right? Because they already know, like, and trust us. Now, on the attracting side, it's the opposite of that. We're going to invest substantially into getting them to know about us, getting them to like us, getting them to trust that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. Yep. So those are the differences.
So then would you recommend then someone segmenting out their marketing efforts specifically for the attraction and the keeping activities?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. They have to be different marketing messages. They're not the same, because on the keeping side, you're speaking to friends, you're speaking to quote unquote family. You're going to communicate in that way.
Right.
You're going to communicate with them in that way. So let's just make up a quick example here.
Please.
Let's say that you advertise every year in a trade publication, right? Maybe it's a regional trade publication. And so let's say that typically you buy, I'm just making this up, a full page ad, and that's going to run you $20,000.
Right.
All right. So let's consider this year. Our intent is we're going to begin shifting our budget to more of the keeping side. Our marketing budget, we want to spend more on that. So maybe we reduce that down to a half page ad. And again, I'm making up numbers here, but that now saves us half of that marketing budget. We can now allocate those marketing funds into the keeping side. So let's say that you've got a list of 50 clients you've done projects for.
Yep.
Now we maybe take, and maybe we know because we built relationships with these people, what are their hobbies? So we employ someone to help us go out and send them some goodies, some gift baskets, some concert tickets, whatever it may be that speaks to them in their hobbies and their lives. So again, it doesn't have to be uniform. It doesn't have to be, a blanket thing. We're going to speak to them. We're going to communicate with them. We're going to give to them in a way that's fostering that relationship for the future.
Excellent. Excellent. So there has to be quite a bit of work done here. Let me ask you this. In your mind, who is responsible for marketing in an organization?
Yeah, I believe it has to start at the top and go down. Okay. It has to start from the top and work its way down. So as the CEO of a company goes, right, so the organization goes. So if the CEO is not in tune with what's taking place and really helping drive the marketing effort, it's not going to roll down the way that it should, right? There's the old adage is in business, there's only two problems you have. One is a marketing problem. The other is a fulfillment problem. And so at a very high level, the CEO of the company, the executive, the C-level people should have their finger. They should have the pulse of marketing and fulfillment, which is the deliverables for the entire organization. And those two broad functions should be pushed down through the organization.
Excellent. Okay. So in a couple of sentences here, let's just summarize the difference between bad marketing and good marketing.
Sure. Yeah. Bad marketing is simply this. Bad marketing is when you don't hold every single dollar accountable. That is bad marketing. Good marketing is simply holding every single dollar accountable. And the difference between those two is often in the small details. It's often in going a little bit farther. It's often in a little bit more effort. It's in separating your marketing between attracting and between keeping, right? It's not these huge grandiose things that make the big difference. It's in the little things. I once heard it said that all of marketing really boils down to two things: psychology and math, right? So we're trying to convince people, we're trying to persuade people, like the book on your shelf behind you there, Persuasion. But the other side of that is math. And that's the side that we give a big pass to when it comes to marketing. The old joke of half my marketing dollars are wasted. I just don't know which half they are.
Right.
That is the reality that we're dealing with. And it's because we get lazy. It's because it's easier to put that responsibility on the ad rep who's coming in with the latest sell, for the publication or for whatever it may be. Right. We advocate that responsibility and say, well, I'm really busy with all these other things. It sounds like a great deal. Go ahead and create an ad for me.
Okay. So what are some tools? And this is a really broad question, but maybe you can give us some insight. What are some tools that you've seen to be effective over the years for helping people to track that dollar, that ROI on their dollars?
The simplest one, Eric, is Excel. Excel is a very simple tool. Obviously, everyone knows what that is and how to use it. But the reality is this: if you're not tracking leads coming in, so every time the phone rings, every time someone fills out the form on your website, if you don't know how they ended up taking that action, you cannot hold your dollars accountable. So it's little things like that make a big difference. Step one, I would say, is literally track every single inbound inquiry that you get. Right? The other part of that is track every single bid proposal that is put out. Right? Track it. When was the follow-up? Did the follow-up take place, et cetera, et cetera? Yep. It has to be tracked.
Excellent. And in terms of a rhythm of accountability, what have you seen in companies is the best rhythm of accountability in terms of checking in on how effective marketing is?
Sure. It's going to vary based on company size, right? The more inquiries coming in, the more data coming in, the more data going out, the more frequent the communication needs to be. But what I would say is weekly and monthly are two great rhythms. Now, it's going to depend again on the size, but every single week, for example, in our company, I get a variety of different sales reports. So one of those would be all the inquiries that have come in, how they came in, has contact been made with those people? Has a needs assessment been scheduled with those people? Down the list. So that happens every single week for me. But then we also have different monthly reports that come in. And those are much more detailed, much more in-depth. Proposal values out, proposals closed, number of needs assessments, et cetera.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So I'm listening to this interview. I know that my marketing is broken. What are 3 action steps I can take in the next, let's say, 90 days to lay some tracks down and start moving my business forward effectively in terms of marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. The very first thing I'd say, Eric, and it kind of alludes or ties back into your question earlier about, where does marketing start within the company? Who's responsible for marketing? I really believe that these 2 questions that I'm about to ask or give you to ask can fundamentally shift entire organizations, entire cultures as it relates to marketing. And those 2 questions are simply this: what have I done today to attract a customer? And what have I done today to keep a customer? Now, let me just take a sidetrack on this real quick. Those 2 questions can be asked by every single person in your organization, and they can be answered every single day by every single person in your organization. It doesn't matter position. It doesn't matter title. Every single person can and should be able to answer those 2 questions every single day.
All right. Now, this is great. I really like this. So let me push back with an objection. I'm in a position where I have no contact at all with a customer for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just buried in a project and I'm just getting out a bid and there's nothing that I can do today to touch a customer or a potential customer or a current customer. How do you answer that objection, Wayne?
Well, Eric, I don't mean to be rude, but I would say that response, I would call that response laziness, right?
Yes.
So if someone comes to me with that response, I'm going to politely say that's the lazy response, because how long does it take, Eric, for you to pick up the phone and call a previous customer and say, I'm gonna use here we are in Louisiana in the midst of this kind of ice craziness that just took place. Yeah. How long would it take for you to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I know weather's been crazy. Just want to call and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you doing? Right. That's a 2-minute conversation. We don't have to go into life history and life stories here. It's a 2-minute thing. So it can be answered by every single person, from the person who cleans the office to the CEO. Those 2 questions can and should be answered by every single person.
I really want to thank you for sharing that, Wayne, because that to me is a golden nugget that I am going to take for myself, and I'm going to communicate that to my clients. What have I done today to attract a customer? What have I done today to keep a customer? And that's for everyone in the organization.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important, so to the guys in the field who are working, if you're a project manager or a superintendent and you're running a crew in the field, you should be communicating to your crew that everything that they do every single day is attracting customers and keeping customers, or repelling customers and causing people to run away from you. You've got to be able to have that perspective. Okay, so as we're wrapping up here, Wayne, you've been so generous with these insights. How can people get a hold of you if they need some help with their marketing?
Sure. The simplest way is through our website. It's just uglymugmarketing.com. There, my phone number is there. My email address is there. You can learn more about, all the different services we provide there on our site.
That's excellent. Now, I got to ask though, why Ugly Mug Marketing?
Yeah. So the name Ugly Mug Marketing actually comes from a quote by the name of this gentleman, of David Ogilvy. The brief story here is David Ogilvy came over from Ireland back, I believe, in the 50s, landed in New York City. The rumor is he had $40 in his pocket and says, I'm going to build an ad agency right here, right now. And over the next 15 years, he ended up building the world's largest ad agency. Ogilvy and Mather for years was the largest in the world. They're still in the top 10 to this day. But David Ogilvy had a saying that was, I would rather an ad that's ugly that gets results than one that's beautiful that doesn't.
Yep.
And so the name Ugly Mug Marketing just plays off of that. Ugly marketing just didn't sound quite as good as throwing the mug in the middle. So nice. Ugly Mug was born.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right. Final question, Wayne. I like to ask everyone this. Where in Louisiana are you?
I'm in Alexandria, right in the middle of the state.
Okay. So Louisiana is famous for its cuisine. So if I find myself in Alexandria and I want to go out to eat, where am I going?
You're going to go check out Pamela's Bayou in a Bowl.
Pamela's Bayou in a Bowl.
Need I say more? The name says it all, right?
Dude, that's some good marketing right there.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm going to find that on the web and I'm going to link that in the show notes. So if you're ever in Wayne's area, you can go check out Pamela's Bayou in a Bowl. Wayne, I appreciate your generosity here. Let me just ask you one more question. If I was to pick up one book to read on marketing, besides the resources that you provide, what would that book be?
Eric, that is a tough question. I'm an avid reader. I read a lot. That's an unfair question.
Oh, man.
Let me think.
You want to pick two?
Well, the challenge is it's always the most current book I'm reading. I'm like, man, this is the best book. Everyone needs to read this book. When it comes to marketing specifically, though, I would say The Psychology of Influence by Robert Cialdini. Mm-hmm. And he's the same author of the book that I've referenced on your bookshelf behind you there a couple of times. Yes. Persuasion. Psychology of Influence would be near the top. The next one would probably be, I may go with StoryBrand by Donald Miller. Sure. Just because it focuses on messaging a lot.
Yes.
And
excellent.
So I think those two would be very good foundational pieces for people.
Excellent. I would agree with both of those, by the way. I really love the Cialdini book and I know the Donald Miller book is excellent as well. So Wayne, I appreciate those recommendations.
You bet.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, Wayne. Tons of great takeaways for the audience. You've been very generous with your time and I wish you all the best.
Thanks so much, Eric. I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Hey, this is Eric. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Wayne today. Thank you for listening to the show. And I hope you're going away with some practical things you can do to improve your marketing. One of the immediate first steps that you should take in terms of upgrading your marketing is make sure that you're focused on right client, right project, and right location so that you can pinpoint your marketing messages to your ideal clients. To help you with that, I've put together a tool that you'll find extremely useful. It's a construction niche analysis tool. And you can go to my website, constructiongenius.com/niche, which is spelled NICHE, and immediately download a Excel spreadsheet that will help you to walk through client, job, and location information so that you can identify where you should be focusing your marketing efforts. So go to the website, constructiongenius.com/niche, download that free tool. If you have any questions about construction marketing, feel free to reach out to me. And I appreciate you listening again to Construction Genius here today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.